eyes follow you as you walk into the courtroom. Those eyes follow you and they pierce you. And they convey things to you that you might not otherwise see. The first time I did this, the eyes that I saw coming from the defendant were not the eyes of a man who should have committed murder. They just didn't look like the eyes of a murderer. The eyes that were following me were pleading eyes, begging eyes. They were hopeful eyes. And I thought at that moment, gee, at this moment right now, I'm perhaps that man's only friend in the world. I like what I do. So I'm here today to tell you why I do that. Another case I was involved in recently involved a case where a man was accused of pulling his hand out of his jacket pocket, and there was a revolver, pointing it at an officer's face, pulling the trigger in cold blood, and killing the officer. It had been a routine traffic stop. The officer had just seen the man walking around a neighborhood at 4 a.m. What was this guy doing there? An ID check revealed that the man was an ex-convict. So, inquiring further, a brief conversation ensued, a shot rang out, and the officer lay dead in the street. To the prosecutors, it was an open and shut case. Obviously, everything had been caught on the officer's V-view camera, the camera that they wear on their chest. All the events leading up to the shooting were documented and recorded in video. The officer had been shot, and the man was accused of actually drawing the gun and firing the gun within a foot of his face. He was said to have pulled that trigger, having aimed the gun at his face, and killed the officer in cold blood without regard for the officer's family, whatever. The video depicted the actions of a man who was desperate not to return to prison. He did a number of other things, including stealing the officer's car and taking his gun and things like that. A lot of things that would be unadvisable, of course. And I'm often asked, in cases like this, why do I do what I do? And why do I stand up for the accused, who sometimes commit heinous crimes, unspeakable crimes? The first time I had done that, the man had actually picked up his daughter and thrown her off a cliff. That's what he was accused of. This time, of course, the man was accused of pulling and shooting a gun at point-blank range. But what I found over the years is that the prosecution often sticks to their story. They develop their theory of the case. They can be a little sloppy once they get that one-track mind and one-track thinking. And they find things that, or they ignore things that they should otherwise include as part of their evidence. It's my job to uncover that evidence. My aim today is to convince you that justice demands that fairness and a competent defense is mounted on behalf of those who are accused, even of murder. To that, I'd like to make 3 points, 3 very important points. The first of which is the premise that all men are innocent until proven guilty. Working on behalf of the accused is actually working on behalf of the innocent. Let me say that again. Working on behalf of the accused is working on behalf of the innocent. They're not guilty yet until proven innocent. To prove guilt, the prosecution must prove all the essential elements proving their case to a level called reasonable doubt, beyond a reasonable doubt. If reasonable doubt remains after the case is concluded, then the jury must acquit. So it's very important that all the holes are plugged and everything. I've also worked on the prosecution side, and it's difficult on that side to plug every hole. This system of innocence and presuming innocence until proven guilty has been with us for a long time. back in the days of the Romans and is old Islamic law, they also presumed innocence. There was a period of time in Europe after the fall of the Roman Empire where people were presumed guilty under Germanic law until they were proven innocent. And in that case, a person sitting on the defendant's stand would have to prove by bringing 12 witnesses that could state beyond any doubt that a person could not have committed that particular crime. That system was grossly unfair, and it favored the nobles and the rich. So fairness demands in our system that a person innocent until proven guilty. The second point I'd like to make is that these, the Sixth Amendment to our Bill of Rights guarantees every defendant the right to legal representation and the right and a process of procuring witnesses speaking on their behalf. The process of procuring witnesses includes funds to hire witnesses such as myself. What happens in cases like that, for example, in this particular case of the policeman shooting, is that we can look at things, witnesses that are hired can look at events. And in this particular case, we happen to notice that the officers had ignored the statements of the defendant, stating that he had actually not drawn the gun from the pocket and had actually just pointed the gun at the officer's body armor, pulled the trigger, but just before the officer reached out with his hand, deflected his arm upward just prior to the shot being fired. When we looked at the jacket, we noticed that there was a little hole in the front of the jacket that looked like a bullet had come out of it, possibly. Our inquiries led the police to check the pocket, and indeed there was gunshot residue in that pocket, proving that the defendant's story was true. He also said that he didn't intend to kill the officer, he intended only to knock him down and leave. Was that true? I don't know. Unfortunately, the defendant was found guilty and he was sentenced to the death sentence. At least I know that he did receive his Sixth Amendment right. Thank you very much.